Um, it, it occurred to me that Dino Dogan is not here this year, and I'll have to yell at him for that. But I'm going to play him right now. For those of you who were in Vegas a couple years ago, he spent a lot of time, every time he got near a microphone, saying, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Especially for those of you who have gone outside and enjoyed the outdoors, you really need to pay attention to that because you can get sick and miss out on the conference. So what I'm really up here for is to introduce our next keynote, Pamela Wilson, and I'm kind of starstruck and in awe, and for those of you who have met her already, you know that is not at all because she's an intimidating person. It's because of all the stuff she's accomplished. I look at this stuff, I'll read you some examples. She must have started when she was 5. So she ran her own offline, or as Yvonne calls it, dirt world business for several years, and then in 2009 she started Big Brand Systems, which is her personal business online, and there she wants to help business owners learn how to combine strategic marketing with great design. So if you want to learn color theory or typography, she has amazing content on that site. And she has launched over a dozen products. She's got a membership program there, courses you can take. And she does coaching, she's got ebooks. And she did all this using content marketing, blogging and guest blogging primarily in those days to find her audience. And today, you may know her better as the executive, she's recently been elevated to executive vice president for educational content at Rainmaker Digital, which probably most of you know better as Copyblogger. And that's, again, that's part of why I'm in such awe of her. She manages the editorial team, she runs the Authority content marketing program and the Certified Content Marketers program. And now she's writing a book. And it happens that the book it relates a lot to what she's about to teach you. The working title is Master Content Marketing. And you can say that as Master Content Marketing or Master Content Marketing. The subtitle is 7 Steps to Cure the Blank Pages Blues and Attract a Profitable Audience. And I know that those are things pretty much everybody in this room wants to be able to do. Pamela is going to give you some practical tips on how to do that. And if you are interested in specifically in the book part of it, 2 things. She has on her Big Brand Systems site a book factory section where she has invited people to help her make her book better. And she's been doing a podcast with Jeff Goins called zerotobook.fm. So go, what are you, 18 episodes in the can so far? If you are at all interested in writing a book, if you want to make the one you're working on better, there are probably not 2 people you could find in the same podcast that could help you more than those 2. So that's all I'm going to say now. I hope that gives you a sense of why you need to sit still, get your pens and papers out, and pay attention. And Pamela says that she wants to have a good Q&A session with you guys at the end. So scribble down your questions, and I will go back and grab a mic and do a mic wrangler for you after she gets through the stuff that she's going to share. So, Pamela.
Thank you. I am a time traveler, and I come to you from the faraway lands of 1987, which is when I started my career. Back in 1987, things were a little bit different. Now, if you're taking notes, you might want to not take notes in this part because I'm going to teach you 3 lessons that I learned in 1987. That was my first year of my career. So the first lesson was make the logo bigger. So back in those days, it was all about what we called TOMA, top of mind awareness. And you wanted to create this for the brands that you were helping to market. So one of the ways that you did this was to make the logo bigger. I heard that from countless clients. It was not about the customer, it was about bringing attention to the brand and getting people to focus on the brand and remember the brand. So make the logo bigger. This was lesson number 2. Let's buy a list and send them a postcard. This was a big thing that you would do back in 1987. You decided you wanted to promote something, so you would buy a list of people who you wanted to reach, and it was based on their demographics, usually their age, education level, geographic area. You bought this mailing list, and then you would have a copywriter write the direct mail postcard that you were designing. Then you would have a designer design the piece, and then you would send the designed piece off to a printer. The printer would print the postcards, send them off to a mail house. The mail house would imprint the postcards with the addresses that you bought, and then they would mail them to people's mailboxes, where people basically would take them and stand over their garbage can and go, and throw them all away. But this was state-of-the-art marketing technology in 1987. People did it a lot, and the whole process took like 4 weeks to complete. But it was a good way to get an audience back in those days. And then the third lesson from 1987 is, do you want to create awareness? Well, place an ad in the newspaper. In 1987, the newspaper was our on-demand media. If you wanted to know what was happening in the world, you would flip open this massive piece of paper and read what was going on and search for your news there. So it was a place that people wanted to be, and you would place ads there because you knew it had a lot of eyeballs looking at it. So place an ad in the newspaper was a great way to get attention. All of these techniques used this philosophy that was basically, we have a message we want to get out or a cause that we want to promote, and we're just going to stand there and spray it and spray it and spray it on people, hoping that they will act on it when it comes time to make a buying decision or a decision to commit time or money to an organization. I call it spray and pray. It was not terribly effective because you ended up sending your message out to way more people than what were really interested in your message. And you ended up annoying a fair amount of them. So that part wasn't very fun. And on the receiving end, you have these people who were basically drowning in information. They were getting marketed to from all corners and being sent information that they didn't ask for and weren't necessarily interested in. So it wasn't a terribly effective system. So let's fast forward to today. Here we are, 2016. It's almost 30 years later. And things are completely different now. Or are they? That's what we need to talk about. Let's look at this and see if things have actually changed from what they were like back in 1987. Nowadays, what we're trying to do is to make our customer bigger, not our logo. And the way that we do this is that we empower our customers with information that we offer to them. And we offer them this information. Basically, what we're trying to accomplish is give them the information that they need at the moment that they need it and at the place in the journey that they're at. And we'll talk more about that. But the idea here is we're trying to make our customer bigger, not our logo. It's all about the customer and not so much about the brand. What about this mailing technique? Well, nowadays, instead of sending unsolicited direct mail postcards to a mailbox, that state-of-the-art platform back in 1987. Now we are using email marketing. Many of us are. And what we're doing is, instead of buying a list, we are building a list and it's a list that we're building basically by invitation. So we are asking people to join this list and become part of our communities. And it's a completely different feeling. They're actually raising their hands instead of drowning in marketing. They're raising their hands and saying, yes, I want to be part of your community. I want to stay in touch with you. So it's a very, very different feel. And instead of just sending them these unsolicited direct mail postcards, what we're sending them is information, content that helps, that is useful, that is effective and helps them at the moment they need it. So it's information that they value because they've asked for it, and it's helpful and engaging. Let's see how this last idea, this idea of placing an ad in the newspaper, holds up. So if you want to create awareness nowadays, you'd be better off to create useful content instead of thinking about placing an ad in the newspaper. And the difference is that when you create useful content, people actually go out and look for it. They will find you instead of you having to intrude on their lives and send them this annoying marketing message. So all three of these changes in the way that we get our messages out and try to draw an audience to us, they all have this common thread. And I'm going to give you a hint on the next slide. I want you to look very closely because I don't want you to miss this hint. You got it, right? It's content. So content is the common thread that unites all of these new ways of marketing. And we know that content works. Now, for everyone in the room, before we go any further, I should define what I mean by content. So when I talk about content, when I talk about content marketing, that is very inclusive. So I'm including blog posts, written blog posts. I'm including podcasts, video. I'm including social media posts, especially on platforms that allow you to share images and text both, like Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, where you can really tell a story. Those are places where you can market with content. So when I'm talking about content, I'm talking about all of that. And we know it works. We know that really effective content can draw the right audience to our business or to our cause. And we know that it helps to build authority and build trust. But it's not easy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start with this story of a place that is very close to where I live. So I live in Nashville, which I'm sure you all guessed because I have such a southern accent, right? I mean, I really sound like I'm from Tennessee. I've only lived there for 2 years, so the accent has not rubbed off on me. But, and I always tell people I'm from Nashville. When someone says, where are you from? I always say, I'm from Nashville. But I actually don't live in Nashville proper. I live outside of Nashville in a small town called Mount Juliet. It's about 30 minutes from the city. And there's this place in Mount Juliet called Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary. And Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary, this is an article that was in our local newspaper, the Tennessean, about this place. And it's basically a couple who adopts senior dogs who are in their final days of life. Most of the dogs have very serious health conditions. They need a lot of care. Some of them have pretty severe special needs. And this family opened their home and their hearts to help these dogs. So they got some coverage in the local paper, which is great. This is their website. Their website is not going to win any design awards, okay? There's no risk of it winning any design awards, but what they do right is they tell these amazing stories about these dogs. So this is why I wanted to bring you the example, because it's an example of very well done content marketing. So they have this website. they're telling the stories of the dogs. They also tell the story on their Facebook page. Again, the Facebook page is not going to win any design awards, but can anyone see how many likes they have? 1,400,000-something. They have a huge number of likes. And the reason they have so many likes, I'm convinced, is because of the stories that they tell about these dogs. They tell these super engaging stories about these dogs. And, people following the Facebook page just fall in love with these animals. They do it on their website, but they do it on social media as well. They do such a good job that a writer from New York Magazine, all the way up in New York, discovered their Facebook page and wrote this article about Mount Juliet's Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary. Gave them a huge amount of coverage. And this writer actually called it the last pure spot on the web. I'm reading my little monitor down here. The last pure spot on the web. It was like the last happy spot on the internet. It was incredible coverage. He wrote up this story, and they got this incredible coverage from a well-known publication. And it's all because they're using content marketing well. So my husband travels a lot, and he had to leave this morning to go to Hong Kong, actually. So he was in the Nashville airport early this morning, and he sends me this text. You're not going to believe it, but Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary has a display at the Nashville airport. And I'm like, what? So he texts me, so these are brand new slides, fresh from this morning. He texts me these photos of this display. And again, this is content marketing. Wait until you see what they've done. So this is a glass display, it's lit, and it's got these ceramic pieces of art that are in the shape of these dogs, right? That's a puppy. And they were able to get members of the community and even artists in the community to either create or paint. I'm thinking maybe they just painted them. But this is Ashley Judd. This is the puppy that Ashley Judd painted, I'm thinking, I guess. This is Barbara Mandrell did this dog. So they've reached out to people in their community. I mean, this is what I think is so fascinating is you would not think that an organization in this tiny town in Tennessee would have this kind of reach or would think to put their cause like in the airport, And here's an important thing just to give you some context. Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary is not run by a pair of savvy 20-year-old social media savants, It's run by a couple who is almost at retirement age, so they just tell amazing stories. And because of the amazing stories they tell, they've gotten a lot of support from both the journalistic community and the artistic and local community. Here's an example of, they talk about their organization, they tell the stories of the dogs. So this is straight from that display at the Nashville airport. Pretty amazing stuff. So this is another organization I want to share with you. This is actually the organization that I'm donating my speaker feed to. They're also in Nashville. Again, not a website that's going to win any awards, but they tell amazing stories about their animals. It's the cat store and dog, I always forget which is what, cat shop and dog store. Their main focus is cats, really, at this place, though, and they use their social media very masterfully. They tell great stories about their animals. They're just kind of hard to resist. And I have to say, I think we need to just take a moment to thank our lucky stars that all of us in this room have these incredibly photogenic subjects that we get to work with. I mean, this could be a convention of people who wrote about, wrenches or hammers or something, right? But, we're all writing about animals and pets, so that's wonderful. So here's the thing about content that's tough, though. This is the part that's challenging. we know it works, and we know it gets results for people who use it well, but creating content like that can feel a little bit like a hamster on a wheel, just like you're churning out the content, like I gotta write this week's post, I gotta write the Facebook update, I gotta do this, I gotta produce, and it can be kind of exhausting. So that's what I wanna talk to you about today. And first, so I have to give a shout out to Emmy. Are you in here, Emmy? Woo! Emmy tweeted me last week to say, you know, actually hamsters really like being on their wheels. And I'm like, okay, but if they were people, they wouldn't want to be on a hamster wheel. So that's my analogy. So hooray to Emmy for reaching out. That's awesome. It's a great use of social media, really, to reach out to someone who you don't even know. So yay, that was a great tweet. That was fun. But we don't want to feel that way, right? Hamsters may like it, but it's not really for people. So what can we do? And you know, the other part of the challenge is that there's just so much out there already. There's so much online, so much content that's already vying for people's attention. People have a lot coming at them. It can feel a little bit like Times Square. And it may feel a little intimidating, especially if you are a person who doesn't have a lot of experience writing. If you don't feel like you were born a writer. And even if you do have writing skills, you might feel like, you know, to write in this environment, I need to change it up a little bit. I can't write the same way I normally do. So it's a little intimidating. How can you stand out? How can you write in this environment? And how can you not feel like you're on a hamster wheel just with this never-ending process? So I have an idea. I'm bringing you an idea about what you can do to help this situation. I was in a very similar place. If you feel like maybe you're not really a writer, that's kind of where I was about 5 or 6 years ago. I had, Tom, I don't know how old he thinks I am, but I am like way older than Tom thinks I am. So I ran a design and marketing studio for 20-some years. And what I did for clients was help them to market their businesses, but I helped them with the visual part. So if a client needed any kind of marketing copy, they would either bring in their own copywriter or they might have like a corporate communications person. They would tap a writer, and I was not a writer. So what I did is I would take the writer's words and make those words look great, but I didn't produce the words myself. And I did this for local, national, international organizations. I had lots of clients and enjoyed that a lot. But like all of us who maybe have done something for a while, I started to get a little antsy. So back in late 2009, I started this website, Big Brand System, which Tom mentioned in the introduction. So Big Brand System is the idea of this website is to attract people who are trying to market their businesses, market their ideas, market their organizations, and help them to, using the tools that are readily available, do a lot of the work themselves. And it's really tailored for people who can't afford to bring in a big advertising firm or marketing firm to do this work. It's for people who really need to know the basics so that they can do it themselves. And I knew when I started Big Brand System back in 2010 that I wanted to use this thing called content marketing that I had heard about. And I knew it would help me to attract the audience that I was looking for, but I was not a writer. The most writing I had done was like long emails to clients. I really didn't write at all and felt I just didn't have a lot of confidence around writing. So I did what anyone does who's looking for information, and I Googled to see what I could find out about content marketing. And I found this website called Copyblogger. Ooh, let me see if I can go back. Uh-oh. Oh, I think we might be, let me see. There we go. So this is Copyblogger. And it is an amazing resource for information about content marketing. So I found this site and started reading it every day and just trying to absorb everything I could from this website. And it is a really, I mean, I was lucky that I found this resource because it is one of the most well-known content marketing websites like on planet Earth. It's huge, and lots of people visit it. So I found the site, loved the information, and read and started incorporating what I was learning in my schedule. So in the midst of all this, though, I had started the online business, but I still had the offline business, and I was doing all of that work as well. So I was basically juggling two businesses. I also had 2 kids in high school, so 2 kids living at home in high school. So I'm juggling all this and trying to figure out how to do this content marketing on my new blog, and I didn't have any posts on it, and I wanted to add information to it. And out of pure necessity of feeling very squeezed for time, I developed this process for writing my content. And it worked so well for me. It just helped me to be able to create content pretty easily. And it worked well enough that I was actually able to find time to submit this guest post to Copyblogger. And to my shock and surprise, they actually published it in March of 2010, which was just a few months after I had started really doing any kind of content marketing. So that was an amazing experience. It got a ton of comments and lots of activity. So as soon as they published it, I sent them another. I'm like, oh, you like that? I'll give you another one. So, and this went on for a few months. They would publish a post, and then I would send them a new one to replace it. And finally, a few months after this whole process started, they actually asked me to write for them once a month. This is me, the person who's not a writer, and they asked me to write for them once a month. So that was pretty mind-blowing. And it goes back to what Pam was talking about yesterday, actually, that sometimes you just have to be brave and go for it. Reach out to people, even though they may intimidate you a little bit, or it's someone who you really admire. Just reach out, and more often than not, it'll go well for you, and you'll be happy that you made yourself, kind of pushed yourself to reach out. So I wrote this post for Copyblogger, got to know them, and eventually they asked me to join the team. So I've been working with the team for just 2 years, and last year, they actually put me in charge of Copyblogger. So I am running the Copyblogger blog, this blog that I admired, and here I am running it. And I'm part of this amazing team of people who do really cool work in the world, so that's very exciting. And I am convinced that all of this happened to me because I found this system for creating content, this weird little formula, which is what I am about to share with you. So what I call it is the 4-day content creation system. Now, if you're taking notes, this would be a good time to take notes, actually. The premise behind this system, and this is what I would like you to think hard about, is that the best way to create high quality content that stands out is to create less content but better quality content. So if you're writing 4 or 5 blog posts a week, consider paring that down so that you maybe write less posts or post less podcast episodes, for example, but you are focused on making them really, really high quality. And the reason for that is that there's so much out there already. And the way that we can stand out is to make sure our content, our blog posts, everything we put out there is really high quality. So the way this works, the way the 4-day content creation system works, is you choose a day that you want to publish. Now, I recommend aiming for 1 super high quality piece of content every week. So if you aim for that, then you pick a day that you want to publish, and then you work backward 3 business days, because we don't need to be creating content on our weekends. We all need our weekends, right? So you pick a day you want to publish, work backward 3 business days, and then you can start this 4-day system. So day 1, what do you do on day 1? What I recommend on the first day is that you just map out the basics of your piece of content. And what are your basics? Well, I like to say it's kind of like you're building a backbone for your piece of content. So the first important piece is the headline. Why are headlines important? Can somebody just shout out, why are headlines important? Google, yes. What else? It's the first thing you see. Now, it's the first thing you see when you get to the piece of content, but it's also the thing that you click on. Exactly. So headlines are super important. They're the first thing that gets attention, and it's kind of like that first decision point, because with any piece of content online, people are like, oh, I don't know, I'm really busy right now. I have so much going on, I'm not gonna read this, right? You have to get them past that point of just wanting to blow off the piece of content. And the way that you do that is you write a really strong headline. So day 1, I would want you to spend a lot of time generating a ton of headline ideas so that you can throw out 99% of them and just keep the one that is actually going to get that click. The other thing that you can work on the first day is subheads. Subheads are really important in a piece of online written content for a couple of different reasons. One thing that subheads do is they give people who are skimming a piece of content a little bit of information about what they're about to read. So somebody's clicked on your headline, you write this awesome headline, and they click and they're on your content. Well, they're still not completely sold that they're going to stay there and read the whole thing. They're looking. It's like, oh, I don't know, do I have time for this? So they scan down the page. If you have intriguing, curiosity-provoking subheads, they'll say, oh, this looks interesting. Maybe I should actually read it, right? So great subheads will do that. They'll convince the skimmers to dive in and consume your piece of content. But the other thing that a good set of subheads will do for you is they create this structure. So they're almost like signposts that show you how you're going to develop your information within your post. That's why I call it the backbone, because if you develop your headline and your subheads, then you've sort of thought through the piece of content and you know what direction you're going to take it and how you'll get it from the beginning all the way to the end. So day 1, backbone. Create those 2 things, your headline and your subhead. And that's all you really have to do on day 1. So let's look at some, there we go, tools for day 1. I love mind mapping tools. They changed my life as a writer when I started using them. I resisted them for a long time because they just seemed kind of geeky and I wasn't interested in them. But when I started using a piece of mind mapping software, it made creating my content so much easier because it allowed me to just dump ideas out of my head and then reorganize them until they were in some kind of order that made sense. If you really prefer tangible objects, and I have a lot of friends who prefer to have something that they can hold in their hands, you can use index cards or even Post-it notes. Something that you can kind of lay out and figure out your headline and your subheads. So this is a mind map, and the type is way too small for you to see it, but this is a mind map of a post I wrote for Copyblogger recently. So on the far left, you can see the headline, and then everything that's bolded, those turned into the subheads. So this was basically what I did on day 1. So I wrote the headline, I wrote the subheads, I dumped in some thoughts that I wanted to make sure I included, and that was it. And that's all you have to do on day 1. Once you have this done, you can walk away from the post and go on with the rest of your day. That's what the content looked like once it was published, so it's got that headline in there, and then the subheads were down below. So that's day one. That's all you have to do. And this is why I'm recommending that you break this process over several days, because taking it in chunks like this will give you a chance to step away and come back to it with fresh eyes several times. And that is going to improve the quality of your content. So day two, how many people in here are coffee drinkers? Raise your hand. Woo! Okay, put your hands down. How many people drink tea? Raise your hand. Woo! Okay, put your hand down. Okay, caffeine for the win. So if you like to caffeinate before you write, this would be a great day to have like an extra cup, because on day two, you're going to be doing a lot of writing. Day two, what you're going to be doing is filling in the details in that backbone that you created the day before. And the idea here is you want to get your first paragraph written. Well, first of all, you'll look over your subheads and your headline from the day before. You're looking at it with fresh eyes, and you can say, does this still work, or do I need to tweak something? So you'll do any kinds of tweaks that you may see that need to happen. And then you write that first paragraph. You create like an introduction section of your post, and then you go and fill in under all those headlines, and you wrap it all up with a call to action. What's a call to action? What you want them to do next. You are a good student, Tom. Okay, so a call to action, it can be a lot of different things, and it's almost like there's a continuum, okay? So a very simple, low-key call to action could be, leave a comment on this post. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment. And then on the other extreme, it would be like, get your ticket to BlogPaws 2017 right now. So you're asking them to make a purchase and a time commitment and all of that. And then there's all sorts of messages that you can give in between those two extremes. We are doing, this is content marketing, so it does serve a business purpose, and that's why finishing up your content with some kind of call to action. If it's a podcast, even saying something as simple as, leave me a review on iTunes if you enjoyed this podcast. That's a call to action. So I always recommend, if you're creating content, think about what call to action you're going to add to the end and make sure you include it. So day two tips, write fast. Write it as fast as you can. You are not editing on day two. You are just trying to get the information out of your head and flowing into this backbone that you created on day one. I always say to people, write forward and don't write backward. So focus on just getting the words out. You're going to aim for, like a messy first draft. That's what I call it, a messy first draft. No one's going to see it. You just want to get the ideas out of your head and fill in this basic structure that you created the day before. Then you're going to walk away from it. You're just going to let it sit for a while. And while you're off living the rest of your day, your brain is still going to be working on this piece of content. So this is the nice thing about spreading this out over several days, is that you'll be washing dishes and you may think of an idea, or you're driving and you may think of something you could add to your piece of content. So you're just allowing your brain to marinate over the idea that you want to present in your content and make it even better. Day three. So I have to have a little disclaimer here. So if you enjoy writing in the morning, this is a sunrise. If you really write better in the evening, this is a sunset, okay? So it doesn't really matter what time of day. It is a good idea to think about when you feel you're most creative and when writing or recording or doing video seems easiest to you. So it's a good idea to sort of be in touch with that. So day 3, what you're going to do is everything that needs to happen so your piece of content is polished and ready to publish. So that means editing it, tweaking it, and then finalizing it. And we'll talk about what those things, what those steps should be. So it can be tough if you don't have an editor. And I think probably 99% of us are not working with an in-house editor who can look at our content before we publish it, right? So to me, that's one of the beauties, again, of stepping away from your content a couple of different times, because what happens is your eyes become fresh again, and you're able to see mistakes that you maybe would have missed if you had just plowed your way through and done everything in one sitting. So you're going to come back to your piece of content, look at it with fresh eyes. I always recommend that you read it out loud. And I recommend that you read it in a monotone robot voice like this. I don't know why, but for some reason, reading your content with absolutely no inflection helps you to see mistakes that you might have in your content. So just go someplace where no one can hear you and read your content with your robot voice. The other thing that I am really lucky to have a fantastic editor at Copyblogger, and she always recommends proofing forward and then backwards. So read your content from top to bottom, and then start at the bottom and read back up again. And by doing that, you're kind of taking things out of context, and the odd spelling or the odd grammatical error might kind of jump out at you. The final step on day 3 is to format for readability. So this is something, how many people here wrote offline, for offline like newsletters or newspapers? Okay, print people unite, yay! So writing offline is very different, because if you've written for that world, you know that so much of it is about not wasting paper, right? You want to make sure your page count doesn't go up too high. So you're always worried about conserving your vertical space and making sure you're not spreading things out too much and having to pay the printer more money and pay for more paper and making a publication that's heavier and costs more to ship and all of those things, all of those considerations. Online, all that goes out the window. So online, we kind of have unlimited vertical space, right? And people online on screen tend to read very differently. So what happens is where for print, you might have a paragraph that has 5, 6, 7 sentences. Online, it's better to keep it to 3 to 5 sentences per paragraph max. Every once in a while, just to mix things up, you can have a 1-sentence paragraph. That's always fun. When you want to really make a point, you could just say it with 1 sentence. So what I always say to people is when you're formatting for readability, and if you come from, if you've either just been in an English class where they told you that every paragraph had to have 5 to 7 sentences, or you've been writing for print where that was just the style, what I tell people when you're writing online is every time a thought turns a corner, hit the return key. So you basically want to get to be really good friends with your return key and hit that return key as much as you possibly can and just space out your thoughts a little bit so they're easy to read. The other thing to look for is if you have a sentence that has a lot of commas, so you list something, comma, and then you list something else, comma, and then you mention something else, comma, that is a sentence that is screaming to become a bulleted list. So whenever you see that in your content, you want to add a bulleted list instead of just making a long paragraph or a long sentence that has a ton of commas in it. So that's the kind of thing you want to do on this final day before publication, is just step back and see what you could do to make the post easier to read and look friendlier and more accessible. I also highly recommend that you add an image. Now, I don't think that's a tough thing for the people in this group. You have a lot of amazing images to choose from. But if you are out there looking, this is a great resource. Pixabay.com, if you're not familiar, is a free stock image website. You do not have to credit the photographer, so it's very convenient. And they have a very good search function, so you can search almost as if it's a paid site, but it's free. For paid stock photos, I love bigstockphoto.com. That's kind of my go-to resource, so that's the one I recommend. And you need to make kind of a decision when it comes to the image at the top of your post. And I wanted to show you these post images from Copyblogger. You can either, well, you can have an image with no text. That's always an option. But I love it when people incorporate text with their images, because these images become almost like ads for your content when you run them on social media. So you have an opportunity to spread the word about your piece of content with an image that maybe has a little bit of text that will give people context and let them know what your content is about. And you can handle it one of two ways. You can add your content headline on your image, or you can do what we do on Copyblogger, which is we kind of write an alternate headline and put that on the image. So if you go to our posts, they'll have one headline, then they have an image, and the image says something slightly different. So we made that decision, and the reason we decided that is because it gives people two ways to get interested in the post. So if the headline doesn't grab them, maybe the text on the image will grab them. That was our philosophy. So you made it to day 4. This is your final day, and what you want to do on this day is to publish and then start promotion. This is when you finally get to see the fruits of your labors out there in the world. So the things that I recommend for day 4 are, first of all, you want to respond to comments. So make yourself available. If you've posted on your blog, or you've put up a podcast episode or a YouTube video, whatever it is, make yourself available and be aware that that's your publication day so that you can check in and respond to any comments. What I have found on Copyblogger is when authors respond immediately to comments, more people tend to comment. It's like, oh, the author is there and I can talk to them. So get in there and make sure you respond. And then I also recommend that on the day of publication, you push your post pretty hard on the social media channels that you use. And you know you don't need to use all of them, right? You know this, right? Yes, no? Okay, good. You're not trying to use all 17 of them, or however many there are. You really just have to find the couple of channels that seem to work best for you and focus on those. So promote your post several times on the day of publication on the social media channels that you use. Epic posts. So an epic post is when you put a lot of effort into a piece of content. Maybe you've gathered resources, or you've interviewed a lot of different people, or you have a huge collection of photos you want to share, or lots of information, and you put it into a post that you've spent a lot of time on. It's going to be a great resource. When you write that kind of content, do not be afraid to reach out to your colleagues and ask for help promoting it. Really great content deserves to have the best chance possible to touch as many lives as possible. So reach out to other site owners, ask them if they would be willing to share, and pass along your content. The nice thing about focusing on publishing one day a week is that the rest of the week you can spend it keeping that single piece of content in rotation. What happens in social media, and I think we can all relate to this, you see a post and you're like, well, that looks interesting, but I'm in a hurry. Maybe I'll read it later. Well, if that person never promotes that post again, then you lose your chance to reach them. So don't be afraid to keep that content in rotation and continue to promote it during the rest of the week. In other words, the other 6 days. That's going to give it the best chance possible. What I want for you is to create content that you are proud to put your name to. that you feel really great about. High quality content that stands out because the information is engaging and useful and maybe even entertaining. And content that works for your business or for your cause. It draws the audience that you're looking for. It builds profits for your business or donations to your cause, whatever the case may be. And stepping back and creating your content over several days will give you the chance to create the highest quality information that you possibly can to help it to stand out among all those other websites that are vying for our attention and all that other content that vies for our attention. If you think about your content like a gift that you are giving your readers and the visitors to your website, and then you give yourself the gift of enough time to create content that really stands out because it's high quality, that's going to give you the best possible results and help you to create content that really makes a difference in the world. I would love to stay in touch. So this is where you can find me. I write for Copyblogger about once a week now. And you can also find me on Big Brand System, and that's my Twitter handle. And I left a ton of time for questions, so I would love to hear any questions you might have. I just gave you lots of information. So, and Tom has the mic.
There we go.
And the mic is
Okay,
working.
I'm going to give you an idea of how I'd like to do this. I'm going to look around for people with hands up and take the mic to that person. And then after they've asked their question, while Pamela is answering, I will be looking around for the next person so that I can get there in time that we can move this along. And I'm going to start because on that epic content slide, I immediately had the question, do you have any thoughts on how often a blogger should be going for the epic so that they can do that little bit additional campaigning for it?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great if there was a formula for everything, right? But I would say, my gut would say, you know, if you could create a post like that once a month, that would be fantastic, or even every other month. When you write something that and we all know what the epic content is, right? It's that one that you have poured a lot of effort into and that you know is going to be really useful, not just now, but a year or two from now, somebody will stumble across it and be like, oh my gosh, I just found this treasure chest of information about this topic that I'm looking for. So when you write a piece of content like that, you want to get help promoting it, and you know, you don't want to tap those people every week, right? So maybe once a month or once every other month, that would be something to aspire to.
Excellent, thank you.
My question is, when you finish your blog and you have your social media shares there, and you hit Facebook, and it goes on Facebook, and then you're hitting it on LinkedIn, or you're putting it up on LinkedIn, and it will say Twitter and Facebook, and maybe it's automatically linked, and then you look at your Facebook page, and there it is 7 times.
Oh.
Well, not 7, but 2.
But more than once.
Yeah.
I would check your Facebook button, because that sounds
Okay.
like it sounds like it might be broken. It's not supposed to do that.
Okay.
Unless, did you have too much coffee that day and maybe click the buttons?
There's no such thing as too much coffee.
I know, right? Yeah, no, it shouldn't do that. So I think it's misbehaving on you. Oh, there we go.
Hold on. That's what
Let's
Wranglers
put a
do.
mic on that answer, because that's important.
This is important.
Hi, I probably have the answer to that. I'm Snowcat Dog, and what I'm thinking is happening is that you have your accounts linked. So for example, when you post on Instagram, it allows you to also share on Facebook, also share on Twitter, also share on Tumblr, also share on Swarm, and then it'll just keep posting. And if you share it on Twitter, you can also share it on Facebook. If you share it on Facebook, you can share. So that's how you get all those multiple posts. I'm guilty of it too. I leave it be because I'm like, well, that's the more people who are seeing the post.
Yeah. That sounds like a good explanation.
Yeah, I guess the first thing is decide whether you want to leave it that way, and then if not, you got to take control.
Nice.
What do you mean about rotating your blog the other 6 days? Wouldn't that be kind of just repeating it, or maybe just changing the words slightly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe in changing the words slightly. So worst case scenario, you have someone in your audience who follows every single social media post and somehow manages to see every single one, okay? So if that's your worst case scenario, you think about that person and say, okay, well, how can I change this up a little bit? I'll change the message every day, just a little. Typically on a long piece of content, there might be different things that you can highlight around the content, right? So let's say you're writing about senior dogs. So maybe you wrote an article about a specific disease that affects them as they get older. So you can write, one social media post could be about a story of a specific dog. So you could say, learn about Leo, who has this disease. And then the next day you might say, learn 5 ways to notice the symptoms of this disease. And the next day maybe you talk about the treatment. So you're always talking about the same piece of content, but you're just highlighting a different aspect of it. Does that make sense?
Oh, am I up? I have a question. I actually work for a couple of partners who've asked me to put together a content marketing strategy. They don't know that's what they've asked for, but it's what they've asked for.
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time getting their buy-in for how much time it does take to create quality content with research and putting things together and coming up with how, who you're speaking to and how you're going to create that. And I was wondering if you have any suggestions, because they've asked me, they're like, we want you to do it, but we don't want you to take very much time to do it. And I keep saying, if you want it to be effective, you need to put a lot of time and thought, into this. Because it does need to be quality if you're going to stand out.
Right.
So I don't know if you have any suggestions on how I can, convert them to give me the time to work on it, because they're kind of like, well, that could kind of be a little part of your job. And I'm like, that needs to be a big part of my job.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing you could say that's probably realistic would be to say, in the first 6 months that I'm creating this content, I anticipate that it will take me longer because I'll still be getting to know the audience and I'll be figuring out what resonates with them. So I would think that at the beginning it will indeed take longer. But as you do it, you probably, it should get faster over time. So I'd be a little, to me that's a little bit of a red flag to have a client who's like, yeah, we want you to do it, we want big results, but we want it to only take a little bit of time. Like that kind of attitude worries me a little bit. So if you can tell them something like that and manage their expectations and just kind of say, it's going to take me longer at first, are you okay with that? And then if they're okay, then you can move ahead. But anything that you can do like what I just presented, where you're creating some kind of a structure and creating content within that structure, that's going to make it much easier. Who else?
I'm over here.
Yes.
I'm Josh from Hello Token. What would you give for advice? I know you stressed headlines and subheadlines. Like, what's the best way to get like a hook on that headline? Just starting out. Yeah.
So you mean how do you create a headline that makes people want to click? There's a lot of resources. That could be a whole speech, right? There are a lot of resources out there that will offer you kind of like headline formulas. And when you see these formulas, what you can do is just kind of customize them with your own information. So, but just off the top of my head, 2 headline formulas that seem to always work and have worked since the beginning of advertising are how-tos and list headlines. So a how-to headline is how to do X better, faster, how to make X more fun, how to be more efficient at X. People love to feel like they're going to get a result from reading your content. And so any headline that promises a result, it's sort of like they're going to invest the time reading, and by investing that time reading, they're going to get this result. That's usually a winning headline. The other kind of headline is the list, or let's say the number headline. So 7 steps to keep your dog healthy when the temperatures are above 110, you know. Anything that basically promises a set amount of information or steps or chunks sounds digestible and like it's going to be useful. So, you know, 8 simple ways to fill in the blank, that kind of stuff. Those 2 headline formulas work great. And then outside of that, I would just do some web searches. We have a great resource on Copyblogger. You can sign up at my.copyblogger.com. And we have a free ebook called Magnetic Headlines. And that's actually got a ton of formulas. So you can look, and my new book is going to have formulas too. They're a lot of fun when you have a basic formula and then you can just fill it in with your own information. That's a great way to get started. Thank you for these great questions, by the
Break
way.
my neck here.
I was wondering if there's a certain software you like for adding text to images and how you keep the text live so that Google can find it.
Okay, so the second part of the question is the bad news, so I'm going to deliver that first. And you really can't keep the text live. What you can do is make sure, if that's important to you, if the text on the image is something that you want Google to pick up, you can make sure that you include that in your post. So that's the bad news, or the workaround, let's say, not necessarily bad news. And then as far as a piece of software, I love PicMonkey. Does anyone in this room, have you tried PicMonkey? Woo, PicMonkey fans, hello. So it's so much fun. It's a really fun piece of online software that will allow you to edit images but also add text. Recently, I would say within the last year, they started to allow you to pick up fonts from your own computer and apply those to images. So if you have specific fonts that you use for your brand, and if you do, that's great, that's a good idea. You can actually use PicMonkey and pick up those fonts and use them on your images. So PicMonkey, it's very easy, very fun to use. It almost doesn't even need, I mean, you'll just go in there and be able to figure it out. It's very easy.
Read one? Oh, sorry. News, that's right.
Well, I have a helpful, potentially helpful info as far as the text on the
good.
images. It can't make the text live, but within any images you put on a website, there's an option for adding alt text.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And that serves a couple of functions that can be searchable, you know, by web bots and stuff. And additionally, any blind users or screen reader users will be able to hear the text on the image, which is very helpful. So if
Yeah.
you have information on your text, or, you know, informational text on your image, they'll be able to hear it, but that alt text will be searchable, so that's a little helpful.
That is helpful. It won't be searchable on the surface. It's kind of in the
Right.
background,
It's a
but yeah,
background
I'm glad you brought
text.
that up. Yeah, that's a great workaround. Alt text.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
it's in properties, and, you know, in the background. The other thing I wanted to just ask or talk about is, I usually, and there might be other bloggers that when they're writing, and I love your process that you told us about that I'll be incorporating, but my dog that I blog with, who's the face and voice of the blog, she helps me as I create the basic content idea and what my plan is, but when I do the photos for it, which she is all the photos, and I'm a photographer, she helps write the content with the photos that we create. So I'm wondering which day, would day one be the photography creation of that, I guess, in your process? Because she's so photogenic and brilliant and animated that she
Yeah.
does help create the story.
Right, right.
So,
Okay, so I'm so glad that you mentioned that actually, because one of the ideas I wanted to share is there's a really well-known marketer who a lot of us at the company I work for admire. His name is Dan Kennedy. He's kind of a hard-nosed, I mean, he's a little pushier than maybe any of us would be comfortable being, but he has said that one of the most effective kinds of content is content that's written by an animal. So I think that's so awesome that you're doing that. So what I would recommend in that case, where you're really dependent on this kind of unpredictable being who's going to provide your photo material, is to think about creating a bank of photos. So think about taking some days in your schedule and making those photo shoot days, and just developing 40, 50 shots. It's almost like you're going to create your own stock photo service of photos of your animal who you're including in your content. And that way, you'll have things to pull no matter what you want to talk about in your piece of content. You'll have some examples. You could do that over several days and develop 100, 150 images that you'd be able to pull from. Your dog will get a little tired of it, but you'll know how to manage that. So, sure.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was really excited to hear about the 4-day because I always have problems putting aside other projects to work on my blog. But in your 4-day formula, when do you have time to do research?
Yeah, it's a great point. So not everyone writes content that needs research. So let's start with that. I mean, you don't have to research some of the content can just come out of your head, right, without any research. But if you're writing content that needs research, you're probably going to need to add a 5th day to that process. So you're probably going to need to back up, and before day 1, you need to almost have like a day 0. And day 0 is when you do your research. So you're going to be gathering information. Maybe on that day, I mean, the thing about my system is you're going into day 1 with a topic in mind, and maybe you need to use your research to even figure out what that topic is. So it probably needs to happen on day 0. Figure out your topic, what you want to say about it, and gather your information so that you have it. That's a great question.
Hi, thank you first of all for coming to speak with us. I really appreciated hearing your...
This is good that
I'll
Tom's
stand.
waving because I
hiding in the corner.
Sorry.
I'm a tiny person.
No,
too, so
that's
hard to
okay.
see.
Thank you.
So my question is, I come from a print background, as you had mentioned before too, and I've noticed this trend among at least my demographic that people are trying to be more conversational in their posts and speak with totally different than even I was taught in school with their language. And from a professional perspective, what do you recommend? You're very eloquent when you speak. How do you translate that into that new format of writing for the internet?
Yeah. I think it's always going to depend on your audience. So I think a conversational style is great for a lot of audiences, but probably not all of them. So if you're used to writing, in a more business-like, maybe academic kind of style, and you're trying to make that transition, the first thing I would ask is, do I really need to write that way for the audience I'm writing for? So just make sure that that's actually, I know people will say, like, writing on the internet, you should write conversationally. Well, not always, and not for everyone. So if you have a blog that's directed at vets, you may want to write more formally. So first, make sure that you actually want to do that. And then if you definitely want to make that transition, I would recommend actually recording yourself talking about the topic. Because then you are literally conversing and you're just writing down the words the way they come out of your mouth. Now, you're going to want to clean them up, but they likely will start from a place that's more conversational if you do it that way. And if you're not used to writing that way, that will just help to get the words out in a way that just sounds more natural. Does that make sense?
Okay, we are just about out of time, and we have one more piece of business to do here.
Thank you so much for those great questions. Thank you.
So you kind of let the cat out of the bag.
I did. I
So
let
I'll
the
let
cat
you
out.
tell them.
Oh.
Can it?
Oh my gosh, my arms almost aren't long enough.
Yeah, we love these big checks.
Yeah. So this is the cat shop and dog store, which I showed you. So thank you.
All right.
You get to keep that.
Oh, awesome. I'll use it to fly back to Nashville. Thank you. Let me get all this.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
All right,
welcome.
one more round of applause for Pamela. She did an awesome
Thank you.
job. Hopefully she got everybody thinking. And we have a really great afternoon because we've got pet expressions for you outside of the exhibit hall, one-on-one sessions, author signing, and a little downtime so everybody can get ready for red carpet that starts at 5. So just remember a few tips for red carpet. Please keep your dogs on a leash, even though it's on a red carpet, just in case. And if you have any questions about for Pamela or anything, she gave you some information, so be sure to follow up with her. Find us if you have questions for us. And one more shout out to Robin Bennett and Jamie Migdal. Where are they in here? They're with Association of Pet Dog Trainers, and they've been helping on site, you know, try to keep all of our dog attendees in line and keep everybody educated on what to look for, whether you're here with any kind of pet. So thank you to them for their help, and thank you to each of you, and enjoy your afternoon.